Welcome to 69X Minutes. I'm Erin Molan. Thanks so much for joining us. Great to have your company. We are the media now, without filters, fluff, and none of the BS we've been fed for decades. Just the biggest headlines, the boldest investigations, and the wildest stories straight from the X-trenches. It is real news, real fast, so let's get into it. Tonight, one president holds the line against foreign influence, demanding peace, security and recognition. We get a sneak peek of Mario's interview with Kosovo's president. From Latin America to the Balkans, constitutional norms are being tested and pushed to the brink. Florida has sent over $900 million back to Washington. It's a bold stand against federal overreach. Governor DeSantis joins us to explain how Florida was DOGE before DOGE was even thought of. And in Spain, a rising voice warns that media, migration and globalist elites are undermining the country from within. Meanwhile, watchdogs are out and DOGE is in. Trump's reform team is shaking up oversight, and we've got both sides in a sneak peek of our brand new show. I cannot wait for this. Debate Club, airing Wednesday at 4:20 p.m. ET. Plus, in my take, global panic over Trump's tariffs. The era of freeloading ends now. But this show is just beginning. This is 69X Minutes. In a region scarred by war and shadowed by tension, one small nation stands as a beacon of Western hope, Kosovo. It's a country where NATO troops still patrol and where a major boulevard proudly bears the name Bill Clinton. Now, with pressure rising across the Balkans, President Osmani is focused on the future, holding the line, fighting for recognition, stability, and a future defined not by its past, but by its potential. Mario travelled to Pristina for an exclusive conversation, and tonight, a first look. The full interview drops soon.
What I've been fascinated by is that most people don't know that Kosovo is the most pro-US country in the world, arguably. People in Kosovo don't care if it's conservatives or the Conservative Party or the liberals that are in power. The US is the US, because the bombing in 1999 was under Bill Clinton in support of Kosovo. And when Declaration of Independence happened in 2008 was under President Bush. So that's why in Kosovo, you really don't differentiate between the two parties. It is the youngest country in Europe. So it's just been, for such a small country, such a small population, it's a fascinating and also heartbreaking history for Yugoslavia as a whole, and specifically Kosovo.
As I often say, the story of Kosovo is truly a story of survivors who thrived. So for 10 years, we lived under an apartheid-like regime. And then in 1999, the war in Kosovo started, which escalated to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. This was a war against innocent women and children. We have the highest number of children killed per capita of any war in former Yugoslavia. About 20,000 women were raped, which was used as a tool of war by the Milosevic regime because they wanted to create intergenerational harm. And of course, about 13,000 people were killed in a matter of months. 128,000 houses were entirely destroyed, including cultural heritage, which dates back to thousands and thousands of years ago, because as you know, we are the direct descendants of Illyrians. But there was a clear intention by the Milosevic regime, and not just against Kosovo, by all means, but also against Bosnia-Herzegovina and Croatia and others, to wipe us off from the face of the earth. And thankfully, democracies around the world came to our rescue, led by the United States, and saved our lives. So it's only normal, I would say, that Kosovo today is and proudly so, the most pro-American nation on earth. Something that we wear as a badge of honor. More than 97% of our people are pro-America. They trust in American leadership. And we see ourselves as an extension of American values. And as you said, this has not been an issue of partisanship, because we were blessed with bipartisan support throughout history. And we really look forward to working with the current administration to see how we can deepen these relations in the future.
What's your thoughts on NATO in general as an alliance?
The impact that NATO's intervention in Kosovo has had, the positive impact, goes way beyond simply the people of Kosovo surviving, being saved, and getting their freedom and independence. It's a lesson for countries around the world. If you start driving, in 30 minutes, you will be in North Macedonia. In 1 hour, you will be in Albania. In less than 4 hours, you will be in Bulgaria. In 4 hours, you will be in Greece. All of them are NATO members. This was an imminent threat on NATO member states. And it was a matter of days that the war would spread to countries like Albania, North Macedonia, Italy, Greece. And if NATO was not to act, this would have been a war on the European continent. So this was a preemptive collective self-defense. So they stopped a much bigger war on the European continent, despite being a small country. Historically, this country and this nation has played a historical role in defending what we call Western civilizations. So practically, if you just go outside my office, you will see that there is a statue of our national hero, Judge Castrioti. Hundreds of years ago, he was the person that defended what we call the last port of Europe, defended what at that time was called Christian civilization, what today is known as Western civilization. So for centuries, Kosovo has been a place where, there, as you said, there were a lot of clashes, but we've always, well before Kosovo was Kosovo, well before Yugoslavia existed, we defended these Western civilizations. And for that reason, right after the war, this was a nation not just grateful, but a nation that believed in the same values that your men and women in uniform who came as our saviors believed in: the power of freedom and independence and human rights and equality. So when you share the same values and you walk each and every step together with your saviors, the Americans and the Europeans and others, it's so much easier to move towards, building a resilient country that has the same beliefs, share the same beliefs.
And we've talked about the positive impact NATO's had on Kosovo. You obviously have a statue of Bill Clinton, and I think you have a boulevard or a street named after Bill Clinton. Is that correct?
Yes, it's very close here. It's in Pristina. It was built right after the war because Bill Clinton was the president that decided on the NATO intervention. And then, as you rightly pointed out, we declared independence when Republicans were in power, and we worked with so many Republicans who are today back in office. I mean, I meet so many of them that served in Kosovo in 1999 that had such a fundamental role in saving our lives. So the gratefulness is absolutely towards both sides of the aisle. And we want to work closely with the current government, with President Trump's administration, because I think that this is an alliance that is strong, it's solid, but at the same time with so much potential to do more things in the future.
Elon and DOGE have changed the world. They've taken on corruption, fraud and waste at a federal level like never before. Billions found, billions more to uncover. But he and Trump can only do so much from the top down. Across America, there's a movement. Tiny DOGE departments are springing up to make local government more effective and efficient. Tina Cannon, Utah's state auditor, has decided she'll lead the efforts to make her state more transparent. Tina is sharing the receipts and she is not backing down.
Transparent Utah is a website, and it has been part of the auditor's responsibilities for about the last 4 to 5 years. But when I took office about 70 days ago, and as part of that initiative, the room we're in right now is Transparent Utah. It is part of the auditor's suite in the state capitol. And we decided, as I campaigned, I was kind of surprised how few people knew about transparency and what was out there and the information they already had on their government. So we decided to create a room where we would leave the door open during business hours and allow the public to come in, and we would teach them how to use the website, what information was out there. And that's when things got interesting. Once we opened the door, we got a little pushback over, we don't want this office in the Capitol. And which was a little surprising to me because it was really well received the first day of the legislative session. The news story was there's something new in the Capitol, and that is a door that's open, and a door where you could come in and learn about the financial situation in Utah, where all of the taxpayer dollars go. And so that's when the pushback started.
This seems like something the government would really be excited about because it would show their constituents, hey, look, we're working for you. Why is it so controversial?
I think it was just stepping outside the norm of what they were used to and really teaching people what was already there. So it was just a way to make more people aware of what we were already doing and out there. And I think that additional awareness was making a couple people uncomfortable. It's hard to be on the other side because to me, it just seemed normal, easy.
Common sense.
Just seemed common sense is a great way to put it. It just felt like a public service and part of what government was intended to do. And especially the reason why in Utah, the auditor is independently elected. I am not appointed by the governor. I'm not appointed by the legislature. So that independent election makes it so I am answerable only to the people. And it was serving those people that elected me and giving them the information that our office already had and making it easily accessible. And then if they needed help in finding that data, we were here to help. We have the ability to make, if someone wants to do a deeper dive or a data analysis, we make them super users for the data. So we just try to make it accessible to anyone and everyone. That's how government is designed to be, or should be designed to be. So that was the initiative, and I think the people love it. I'm not so sure some in leadership like it, but the people love it, and it's been really popular. And I think that might have been part of the problem. I think the best way to put it is there's an old saying that says power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So there always needs to be balance to that, regardless of who's in charge. There needs to be oversight, clarity, transparency in what is actually happening in government. And that isn't always welcome. So I think that oversight, that transparency, regardless of who's in charge, sometimes makes people a little uncomfortable. So
yeah, so
I don't
there's
think
a bit.
it's a partisan issue, really. I just think it's a power issue.
What is the biggest issue or inefficiencies you're seeing in Utah?
So that was part of what was happening is that as the press became more and more aware of what was out there and the stories that started being run were about, well, what salaries were, what some of the executive branch salaries were. Because like I said, you can search salaries on our website in 3 different ways: by job title, by name, or by entity for the highest paid employees in an entity. So you can do that kind of research. So there were a couple of stories about who was being paid, how much above average that was. And so those stories were coming out, but there were also stories about the cash and cash equivalents. So in other words, government savings accounts. And then it became a policy question. Is it really appropriate for government to have such a large savings account? Because it's not their money. It is the taxpayers' money. And how much money is appropriate for a rainy day fund? How much money is appropriate for self-insurance? Those were the policy discussions that really started happening once people were becoming more and more aware of exactly what was there. I think transparency has been a great way of just shining a light on what's actually happening, which sparks a conversation. Is that appropriate? Is it not appropriate? And the policy discussion started from there over just knowing what was actually going on.
Hello and welcome back to your weekly markets update on 69X. Bitcoin dipped below $82,000 this week following President Trump's announcement of new global tariffs. This news shook financial markets and sparked a pullback in risk assets, with tech stocks, crypto, and emerging markets all sliding on trade war fears. On the policy front, crypto executives urged U.S. lawmakers to let stablecoin issuers pay interest to users, which is a hot topic as bills advancing in both chambers aim to define how stablecoins should be regulated. Meanwhile, Circle, the company behind USDC, filed to go public on the New York Stock Exchange after revealing nearly $1.7 billion in revenue last year from its reserve holdings. And finally, Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. announced a new Bitcoin mining venture called American Bitcoin. They're partnering with Hut 8 to build a massive U.S. mining operation and strategic Bitcoin reserve. Could this be the start of a new American crypto renaissance, or just a political posturing in a volatile market? And that's it for this week's recap on 69X. Thanks for watching. I'm Adele, and I'll see you next time.
The watchdogs, inspector generals, gone. Was it smart reform or a dangerous power grab? Dr. Mark Moyar says it was long overdue. Two sides, one fight. The future of government oversight debated. Catch the full conversation on Debate Club airing Wednesday at 4:20 p.m. ET right here on X. Here's a sneak peek.
Was Trump right then to fire the 17 inspectors general?
No. I think that's a hard no from my perspective. The entire construct of the inspectors general is that we're apolitical, we're independent actors within the agencies to provide that fair, objective, independent voice within the agencies. And part of that independence is that we rode through administrations. I was appointed by Trump under the first Trump administration. I was there for a couple of years, and then I went through the Biden administration, and then Trump fired me in the very beginning, 4 days into his second term. That's what undermines the inspector general positions, and that's exactly what we don't want. You don't want political lackeys in those positions. You want people who are independent, because if you think about it, let's just put this in business terms. Trump is a businessman. Let's put this in business terms. Would he invest in a company where the financial statement auditors would have been fired for anything other than a clean audit? No, of course not, right? Because then you can't trust the books. Would he invest in a company where the bond rating is a AAA, but he found out that the bond rating officials would have gotten fired for anything other than a AAA rating? No, of course not. That's exactly the problem here. We want those IGs to be empowered to speak the truth and to share that truth with agency leadership, with the White House, with Congress, with the American public. That's the whole point of who we are and what we do. I'll give you an example. If I were, I was at the Department of the Interior, and the Department of the Interior controls all the oil and gas leasing on federal lands. So if I were, when I was nominated, say I had Facebook comments, or I had written an op-ed where I said, drill, baby, drill. Would anyone then trust the reports that came out under my name related to wind energy, solar energy, or even related to the programs on oil and gas, right? Or on the flip side, if Biden had appointed me and I had written Facebook posts or op-ed columns supporting climate change action, would anyone view my reports as credible when we're talking about oil and gas, or offshore in the outer continental shelf, or wind and solar? No, of course not. And that's the exact problem. We don't want political lackeys in those positions, because that undermines the independence, the credibility of those reports. And that's what those are based on. And so when President Trump fired 17 IGs, later an 18th IG, for what they did, that threatens the very construct, the entire construct of independence, which from my perspective is something that's tragic. Other countries look to our construct of inspectors general and say, how did you do this? How can we adopt that process, that entire construct? And the key point is that independence piece. And that's what blows their mind in other countries that we've dealt with. And I'm just very sad to see that, that potentially going away. I think that's where we're going with this. And that's very troubling to me.
Dr. Moyar, what do you think? Was Trump right to fire the 17 inspectors general, later 18?
I think in general, it made sense for him to replace some of them. I can't say I'm intimately familiar with all 17 of those cases, but one thing I would say for starters is that there is a major precedent for doing this. Ronald Reagan, when he came in 1981, fired all of the inspectors general and then hired some of them back. Now, I'd say in theory, it would be great if this was purely nonpartisan. But the reality of Washington, and I think most Americans understand this, is that when presidents pick people for these things, they have certain things that they view as priorities, and they're kind of hoping that those individuals will favor those priorities. Inspectors general have a lot of discretion as to what they cover and what they don't. So if there's an issue of concern to one president, he might try to find somebody who is more interested in that issue. And I think a big part of the problem, and I think why you see greater receptivity to what's going on, is that we've seen some really unfortunate cases of inspectors general abusing the public trust and lack of accountability. The Congress did pass a measure in 2022 requiring you give 30 days notice and provide reasons, and the administration did not adhere to that, and so you saw some pushback over that. But even people like Senator Charles Grassley, who've been generally supportive of the inspectors general, have also become frustrated with some of these inspectors general who simply did not do their jobs and were allowed, in some cases, to continue. I mean, Laura Wertheimer is an example I've cited. She was accused of various actions that ultimately got her removed, but it took 4 years for her to be removed. We had USAID, where I came from, we had some particularly egregious examples. We had Inspector General during the Obama administration who was caught by the Washington Post misrepresenting reports in over 400 different places. Eventually, he was pushed out with congressional pressure. And then the whistleblower who was instrumental in getting him out then became a target for the next Inspector General, Ann Calvarisi Barr, who ended up getting that person pushed out. And then when I went to Ann Calvarisi Barr, in my case for whistleblower retaliation, she and her staff tried to come up with every excuse in the book as to why I wasn't a whistleblower, and they had to back off of that, and then conducted 2 silly investigations. And there's lots of other cases we've seen like this. Department of Defense Inspector General was highlighted in a 2020 article called Death of a Whistleblower after somebody killed himself who had bad dealings with them. There's a foundation called Walk the Talk Foundation that has all sorts of cases with Inspector General misconduct or inaction. And so you've seen people, and this is not just on the right, I would add too, a lot of people on the other side think the Inspectors General have caused so many problems, and it is time that the White House take action in cases where the people are not committed to fighting waste, fraud, and abuse as people are expecting.
Well, while we're on this subject, then, let me ask you this. So, Inspector General... Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd like to offer a rebuttal on a couple of those angles. So thank you, David. First of all, with respect to Reagan, I would argue that precedent cuts the other way. When Reagan came in, you have to remember the Inspector General Act was enacted under President Carter. He appointed the first 12 IGs. Then Ronald Reagan came in 1981. So this is the first presidential transition under the Inspector General Act. He came in and he fired all of the political appointees, which at the time would include the IGs. There was such a hue and cry from Congress and stakeholders that they ultimately reversed course and hired back the remaining IGs. About half of the IGs ended up coming back in, and then that set the precedent for literally every single presidential administration change, be it from Republican to Democrat or the other way around. Every single one maintained all of the IGs in office. There was never removals, anything like this, not even one. I would agree with you. The things we saw in the FBI with respect to the Russia, machinations, whatever you want to call them, were wrong and bad, and folks should be, fired and held accountable. There's no question about that in my mind. But it would seem odd to me now, because of the partisanship there in the FBI, we would then turn to the OIG community and say, okay, now we're going to make this partisan. That doesn't quite resonate with me.
This is about the $900 million to DOGE. DeSantis calls it a win for taxpayers. His critics, well, they call it a stunt. Florida's governor joins Eric Bolling to talk DOGE, federal waste, and the fight against woke spending.
One of the most important things recently is that you, on the heels of DOGE, Elon Musk and Big DOGE, you've done the same thing here in Florida recently to a lot of success. I think the folks would like to hear about it.
First, on the federal DOGE, I had rejected money under Biden for infrastructure, and they wanted us to do all this refugee stuff for his open border. And so we rejected the funding, and we went to Biden's administration, like, hey, take this back. They didn't even know how to take money back because no one had ever given them money back. So we went to see Elon Musk in DC a few weeks ago, and I said, hey, Elon, I got this money, and so take it back. And Elon's like, if you want to give me money back, I'll take it. So we ended up returning close to $1 billion to the federal government to help their DOGE efforts. Now, we've said in the state of Florida, we were DOGE before DOGE was cool. So right now, we have the lowest number of government workers at the state level per capita in the entire United States of America. Our budget, even though we have 3 million more residents than New York State does, our budget is less than half of New York State's budget. And since I've been governor, if you look at Florida's 180-year history and all the debt that was accumulated, I've retired 41% of it in my tenure, and we're going to end up doing over 50%.
How in the world can you be doing this when states like California, New York, Illinois just are coming in billions, if not tens of billions, below what they're spending?
Well, our economy in Florida has been ranked #1 in the nation 2 years in a row by CNBC. And what happens is, Eric, is New York, California, they do bad policies. It repels taxpayers. People leave, businesses leave. They end up not raising as much revenue because their economic base shrinks. And so they go back to the well and do the tax policy again, and it causes the same reaction. So they're in a vicious cycle where they have higher taxes and regulation chasing a smaller economic base. And, you know, California's got a lot of wealthy people still, but we have gotten a lot that have moved to Florida. New York, you've seen the economic base shrink there. So they're never going to be able to square this circle. Whereas in Florida, when we are cutting taxes, when we are maintaining no state income tax, that creates a bigger economic base. And so you end up raising revenue, more revenue, even as you're taxing very lightly. So one of the things I launched a program a couple years ago called Moving Florida Forward, because we have issues with traffic in some of these areas. Some of these projects weren't even scheduled to begin till next decade. So we accelerated that with an infusion of additional cash. And now we're going to be able to bring these projects to completion 5, 10, even 15 years ahead of schedule.
You know, I guess COVID helped this situation, but people came from the north, northeast, came from around the country, I guess, even around the world. They come here and they put pressure on the infrastructure. The concern I have is in the voting booth. Now, a lot of these folks come down from New York, and all of a sudden you're seeing a little bit like Florida is so red, and then all of a sudden Florida 6 becomes a toss-up. Question is the voting demographic, does it become a little bluer with these folks coming down?
You go back to 2018 when I got elected, Florida was a 1-point state. The governor races, presidential races leading into that, all decided by 1 point. I got in with less than 1 point margin. And so folks in Florida were very sensitive about, hey, this is a very delicate political balance. What could happen? Now, you know, I threw caution to the wind and I governed very boldly and unapologetically. I think that's part of the reason it's moved right, because we've drawn a sharp contrast with the Democrats. But I will tell you, especially when we saw the migration really pick up at the beginning of COVID, I had a lot of supporters that were freaked out by seeing all these New York license plates and even California license plates, because I was born and raised in Florida. I don't think I ever saw a California license plate. I mean, that was a place people aspired to move to, because if you have another 50, 100,000 net Democrats, it could end up going blue. And I even had supporters, they would go in South Florida, kind of in your neck of the woods, they'd go to the supermarket, they'd put a flyer in the windshield of everyone with the New York plate saying, don't vote down here like they do up there. Well, what ended up happening was, when I became governor, we had 300,000 more Democrats registered in the state than Republicans. By the time I ran for re-election in 22, we had flipped that. We were 300,000 more Republicans than Democrats. And then after I got reelected, it was like on steroids. We now have 1.2 million more registered Republicans than Democrats. So clearly these are not liberals.
This is on you, Governor. This is on you. You stepped in and you went at it with the woke nonsense with Disney. You came in, you made Florida a carry state, free carry state. You did everything right, and this is amazing that this amount of immigration from the Northeast is actually turning into more conservative or Republican voters because you're changing hearts and minds, literally.
So I do think Florida, because of the way the legacy media has treated us, I think it has served their narratives, even though they're phony narratives. I think it has served to repel some of the people on the left from wanting to move, and I think it's served to attract that. So it's been an imbalance. Because Florida's gone Republican so decisively in the last 4 or 5 years, people know the only way you get elected in most parts of this state is with an R by your name. And so what I'm seeing is liberals running as Republicans. Maybe they get special interest funding, they can fool people and win a primary, then they get in, but they still govern to the left rather than govern conservative. So that's something that we didn't really have to deal with as much when we were a swing state. It was the battle lines were drawn.
President Milei's chainsaw spirit is taken to the IMF. The International Monetary Fund, led by Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva, has launched its first ever Advisory Council on Entrepreneurship and Growth. And in a groundbreaking move, it has requested President Milei's Deregulation Minister, Federico Sturzenegger, to be a select member of it. Milei's chainsaw guy was the inspiration behind Elon Musk's DOGE.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
Sturzenegger's inclusion signals the IMF's recognition of President Milei's bold economic overhaul. What will the IMF do with this approach? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. This is Argentina's Milei News, and that's your 69 seconds for 69 minutes.
Once the darling of the progressive elite, Tesla was their climate saviour, the poster child of, well, the future. Now it's become a woke flashpoint. From protests to boycotts, the left has turned on the very brand they once championed. Asra Nomani exposes the hypocrisy and the movement behind the meltdown.
I saw the keying and destruction of Teslas. I saw the attacks on the dealerships. And so I was curious. I was curious who was behind the attacks. An organization called Third Act, which has been organizing many of the protests in the area. And within minutes, I started seeing some familiar faces. And these were people who were activists inside the Democratic Party in Fairfax County, Virginia. I also understood other organizations that were involved, including a major one called Indivisible, which has now, I have learned, organized the protests around the country. They had created this nice little jingle at the beginning in February called Tesla Takedown, and that became their hashtag campaign. And so that's a pretty powerful word, as we know, take down. To take down something is to basically dismantle it, to destroy it. And so the target was not the government and the administration, but a business, an actual electric car business that, of course, was founded and created by Elon Musk, who is part of the Trump administration. But it was very curious in my 40 years of reporting in Washington, D.C., that these activists had targeted a private company instead of government officials themselves. So where did this come from? 259 groups have been involved in the approximately 900 protests that I have in this database. And who was involved? It was the organizations from the Democratic National Committee apparatus in New Jersey that participated in those protests. You can see it just goes on and on and on. And what we end up having then is a result in which you end up with a chart that I've created that I'm going to be putting online on my website, asranomani.com, and you can start seeing the amount of big money that is involved, the number of Democratic clubs that are involved, 100% of them connected and affiliated with the Democratic National Committee. And they have combined annual revenues of $2.5 billion with a B. That's a lot of money. And that is a lot of resources that has actually also been supported by taxpayers, because these organizations, many of them and most of them, have tax deductible status, which means that they don't have to pay taxes on their operations. What are they creating? They are creating this cacophony in the United States of this protest that people are going to hear reported in the news as, quote, organic or grassroots. But as you can tell from the data, this is not grassroots. This is what we call astroturf, which means fake grass. And unfortunately, we have a failure in the mainstream media coverage of these activities, because what they have unfortunately done in, from CNN to MSNBC is cast this as a grassroots event that doesn't have this top-down effect. And ultimately, what does that fail? That fails the citizenry, that fails truth, that fails transparency. This is the protest industry. That's what I call this. Some people, you could call it the protest industrial complex, because it is a industry. And this industry has the websites, the vendors that are going to create the signs. They've got their graphic artists ready to bang out really pithy messages and really catchy images. And so they're just going to move from headline to headline, and they are going to be engaged in another dynamic that they call rapid response. So rapid response is specifically designed, just like the word suggests, to respond to the news rapidly. And what they do is they then create this echo chamber within this industry of their like-minded individuals and organizations. Why is it that their signs are all the same, their chants are all the same? Because they churn it out. And that's what I've been trying to do with the Pearl Project, is study the propaganda, investigate the organizations, follow the money, and then help educate and inoculate people.
A dramatic turn in Brazil, where a defense attorney was arrested inside the Supreme Court. Legal experts say it's unprecedented. Human rights groups call it an attack on democracy. Critics warn Brazil's judiciary has crossed the line, from law enforcement into lawfare. Now, a growing chorus says dissent is being criminalised and free expression is under siege. So what's really going on? Tonight, two key voices, Eduardo Bolsonaro and Congressman Marcel van Hattem, join us to lay out the stakes and, of course, tell us what's happening next.
They are trying to jail Jair Bolsonaro.
Mr. Bolsonaro has been a target of the Supreme Court of Brazil. Now he's facing trial for an alleged coup attempt, which is also like a joke what they're suggesting that Mr. Bolsonaro tried.
This is a witch hunt that everybody is looking, and it's not only against Felipe or Jair Bolsonaro, it's against some other people, the whole right-wing movement led by Jair Bolsonaro. So in fact, who is on trial is not only Bolsonaro, but the whole movement that he represents. And is a hope, and there is a hope of this movement can save Brazil from the risks of socialism.
When you look at what is happening to Mr. Bolsonaro, it's an act of revenge from the Supreme Court, because during his mandate, he was not even, free to govern as previous presidents. They were interfering pretty much every day in his mandate, in his ability to govern And during his mandate, he criticized the court not only for this, but also for other political activities.
And I hope the whole world is watching that. This is what we are trying to do in Brazil, trying to save our democracy.
We saw that the Supreme Court was working in consonance with the media complex in Brazil and the leftist parties in order to prevent Bolsonaro from winning the election in 2022, engaging in the electoral process in a way to censor Bolsonaro supporters and Bolsonaro himself, while giving Lula the full ability to speak anything he wanted, even though they were fake news or blatant lies, without any kind of interference from the electoral court in this case, which is actually a subsidiary of the Supreme Court. And when he finally lost the election, that election was definitely almost impossible to win in the way that the Supreme Court acted. After that, he, was out of office, and then the revenge started in the Supreme Court.
What they are doing is they are trying to speed it up as fast as possible to convict Jair Bolsonaro, and so Jair Bolsonaro cannot run on the next year election. We are going to have elections in October 2026, and Bolsonaro is leading all the polls. Every time that we have a new poll in Brazil, Bolsonaro is getting better and better, because Lula da Silva is dragging the country to a deep economic crisis. So, in the end of the day, even if Lula sent millions and millions of dollars to the legacy media, it is not working anymore, because when you go to the supermarket, when you go to a gas station, people is feeling the inflation. And this is all, you cannot ride all of that. So that's why they are doing this. And all the other cases that they made a carnival, they tried to create a narrative to incriminate Bolsonaro.
With the January 8th events, which are pretty similar also to what happened in the United States on the January 6th events. So the January 8th events, in which thousands of Brazilians rushed into the houses of Congress and the Planalto Palace where the president sits, but the president wasn't there. That event was definitely an event that only was possible in such violent scale because the government didn't do enough to prevent anything from happening, and two, because there were most probably, and I would say most certainly, infiltrated agents that helped, to provoke the damage, and not only helped, but my opinion is that they actually triggered the whole thing, the whole event. And now Bolsonaro is being held accountable for something that happened when he was actually in the United States. He was not even in Brazil.
We had, if you go to YouTube, please watch that, the huge rallies that Bolsonaro is doing on Copacabana Beach. We are going to have other one in the beginning of April in São Paulo that will be for sure even bigger. So even with the threats of the repression, people is going to the streets because they cannot support anymore this kind of censorship, this kind of dirty game.
So actually what we see is this supposed case or a fake judicial case against Mr. Bolsonaro, which is actually a persecution and a vengeance, also because the ones who are to judge him are the same that supposedly were the targets of this attempted coup d'etat, including Justice Alexandre de Moraes, who is the rapporteur for the case.
We do not want privilege to Bolsonaro family or to any right-wing politician. We only want a normal democracy where the opposition can say whatever they want with no risk to seize the passport, to freeze the banking accounts, or even go to jail. This is not only about Brazil. We are also looking at in other parts of the world. And about the judgment of my father, President Jair Bolsonaro, it's not only him that is going on trial. He's going on trial in name of the whole political movement that he's leading.
My name is Matt Tardio from the Speak the Truth podcast. The U.S. has moved massive amounts of military hardware and equipment over into the Middle East in preparations to both strike Iran and the Houthis. Donald Trump came out and he warned Iran if they did not stop the Houthis from striking Israel and the Red Sea shipping lanes, that we bomb them as well. Why in the world would the United States currently today want to start another war in the Middle East? Well, to understand that, you have to understand who the Houthis are and what it is they're doing. Iran is known as the largest state sponsor of terror. And why is that? Because they fund groups such as the Houthis and Hezbollah. And the Houthis are not a little terror organization either. While they are labeled a foreign terror organization by the United States of America, they have access to things like anti-ship ballistic missiles and ballistic missiles themselves. As a matter of fact, the first ballistic missile actually shot down exo-atmospheric was fired by the Houthis, and they've had a great impact. They've shut down 80% of the merchant traffic in the Red Sea over the last year, having a massive impact on world economics, causing a 10x increase in shipping time it takes just to get around Africa. When you really think about the economic impact, it's that time. I'm Matt Tardio from the Speak the Truth podcast, and that was your 69 seconds over on 69 Minutes.
He's called a truth teller by some, a traitor by others. Scott Ritter has challenged presidents, questioned wars, and exposed uncomfortable truths, no matter the fallout. Now he's back. And his take on Hamas, Israel, Trump, and Iran. It's as explosive as ever. Love him or hate him, Ritter never holds back.
This will be a little controversial, but I'll say, Hamas beat Israel. If you think anything other than that, you're not a military person. And the Israeli military admits this. They've just put out their own internal study that says on October 7th, Hamas strategically defeated Israel. It was a strategic military victory by Hamas over an ill-prepared Israel. And in the 15 months that followed, Israel did not defeat Hamas because the Israeli objectives were stated as the physical destruction of Hamas. And what we saw when the hostages were being released is that thousands of Hamas fighters who should have been dead were in the streets wearing uniforms and parading. They weren't defeated at all, not even close. What was defeated was Israel. Their military was unable to accomplish the military task, and politically, Israel destroyed its reputation globally. I think Hamas has made a huge mistake about the hostages. I think that they have lost... they've lost some of their moral standing amongst the Palestinian people, that there's no reason for Hamas to hold on to these 54 hostages anymore. They should be giving these people up and making every effort to bring an end to this conflict. The Palestinian people have suffered enough. And I think Hamas, they say pride cometh before the fall. And, they've taken this uncompromising stance on the hostages, and I think it is... it's hurting them. It's hurting them on a number of fronts. It's allowing Israel to claim, a moral foundation for what it's doing, and it's eroding the trust and confidence that the people of Gaza had in Hamas. So I do think that there is the beginning of an erosion of the support that existed there. And then, let's look at Iran today. The Iranians have said that they will not respond to the maximum pressure campaign that's been put on by Donald Trump. That's a non-starter for them. That there's just no place to negotiate their nuclear program, etc. For Iran to build a nuclear weapon, it would have to kick IAEA inspectors out of Iran. Right now, the IAEA inspectors have a good grasp on where the Iranian enriched material is. And in order for Iran to build a bomb, they would have to divert that material to a centrifuge cascade and then to make highly enriched uranium, and that diversion would be easily detected. So it's not as though Iran's going to build a bomb in secret. And I actually believe that if Iran kicked inspectors out as they were moving to do this enrichment, that the United States would bomb Iran, and so would Israel. That Israel and the United States aren't going to wait around for Iran to get a nuclear bomb, because 3 to 5 nuclear weapons detonated over Israel eliminates Israel forever. Kills everybody in it, and you can't live there. You may have some counter-strike capacity on submarines that you'll seek your revenge, but it would be the end of Israel. And Israel knows this, which is why they're never going to allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. Lebanon will support Hezbollah as a resistance movement. And here I think Israel's made a big mistake by continuing to occupy southern Lebanon, because all it does is provide legitimacy for the continuation of Hezbollah. But Hezbollah has to be careful, because if they engage Israel in continued conflict, Israel will punish the Lebanese population, the non-Hezbollah supporting population. And there's a risk that Hezbollah will become isolated, alienated, and eventually cut off and wither. So Hezbollah is treading very delicate political grounds here, and they don't have a Hassan Nasrallah, who's been around forever, to help them accomplish this task. So I do think you're going to see some hesitancy on the part of Hezbollah in terms of decisive actions. I just think that Hezbollah has its hands tied politically because of the new reality that exists. They have to take into account the totality of Lebanese concerns, and they are a political party, not a resistance movement. I was watching the United States head down the path towards inevitable nuclear war with Russia. Had Kamala Harris won this election, I believe that we would have been engaged in a global ending nuclear conflict with Russia by this summer over Ukraine, because she would have doubled down and put Russia in a corner, and there would have been a nuclear exchange, etc. So I think America needed to change trajectory. The problem is Trump the right trajectory? On the issue of nuclear war with Russia, I believe that we dodged a bullet, that no matter what, we're not going to see Donald Trump going to nuclear war with Vladimir Putin, that both sides understand that that is not a desired outcome. So that's a big relief. That means I get to, enjoy my summer vacation. But this isn't his first rodeo. He did this before, and he failed. And Trump admits it. He says, I was not prepared to be president. I became president, and I had no idea what I was doing, so I had to bring in people from the establishment who are the deep state, and I got betrayed, and I got boxed in. Trump knows that what he calls the deep state, this unelected bureaucratic blob in Washington, D.C., is the enemy. And that if he's going to succeed in any of these policy changes, these transformational policies, he has to dismantle the deep state, which he's doing right now. We've been cursed. We live in some of the most interesting times imaginable. Again, that's not a statement that says that I love everything that's happening or I hate everything that's happening. It says that what's happening is new, it's scary, it's interesting, and we're in for a hell of a ride.
There are two Cypruses. Did you know that? The EU wants peace. Turkey wants control. And one man says it's time to choose. Christos Christou leads a conservative movement in Greek Cyprus, and he's not mincing his words. Peace means a unified Cyprus, and Turkey, well, out. This island's future may shape Europe's next crisis.
So Turkey is using illegal immigration in order to create political issues within the region. EU clearly understands their strategy, and what Turkey is trying to do is to implement Muslim communities. It's been seen in Greece. It's happening now in Cyprus. Clearly, they're trying to control as much as they can the Cyprus Republic. Turkey has never shown a realistic and positive view towards the solution, the Cyprus solution. Every time there is a new agenda on the table, they will come up with new wants and ideas about this, and the whole concept is just twirling around. We definitely do not want to be controlled by Turkey. It is not the issue about Muslims and Christians, but it's an issue about being controlled by Ankara. We need to also understand that since 1974, there has been an influx of
population from Turkey to Cyprus illegally, which is a war crime, and we should not legalize this war crime with a solution in Cyprus that will accept the people that moved from Turkey to Cyprus after the invasion to be part of the solution.
Cyprus is not divided. There is an invasion. An invasion took place in 1974. So we have occupation and invasion from a third country, which illegally is occupying 40% of our country. 200,000 Cypriots had to move away from their homes. So for us, right now, it is the establishment of the Cyprus Republic as a state. And this is what also, as the National Front, it's one of our stronger points that we believe in establishing of the Cyprus Republic.
We are not against legal immigrants who are coming to Cyprus for a specific period of time, working in parts of the economy which is needed, in the sector that they are needed, but for a specific period of time, as all visas are all around the world. Turkey is opposing for changing presidents of the Republic of Cyprus after the rotating presidency every 5 years. So for 5 years they say that it should be someone of Greek, a Greek person, and after 5 years a Turkish person. This is anti-democratic. You cannot elect people in power depending on their nation and their nationality and their language, but one person is one vote, and people in power should be elected.
There's no two-state potential. Turkey will clearly push new plans on the table, new for federation or for co-federation. It's evident that the EU has a strong position in the solution of the Cyprus problem. Since the economic crisis of 2010, there's been a lot of strategies and efforts in order to reestablish our economy, but our living has diminished. And right now, the Cyprus population, Cyprus people are struggling, and they're economically struggling. But we're hoping that the economic resurrection that is taking place right now in Cyprus will help us reestablish economically.
The change in the policy from the Trump administration has awakened the European governments from being sleeping for the past decades and understanding that they have to invest in defense systems and their security. This new mechanism that's been building, for us the most important thing is that Turkey should have no saying and be no part of this. The problem in Cyprus are not from us, but they are occurring due to Turkey, which is a problematic country that's trying to create problems not only in Cyprus but in the whole Middle East with their policy of creating a new Ottoman Empire in the region.
Trump right now is sending a very strong message for change, that we're turning back to conservative priorities and back into for the Western civilization. As a political party, we strongly are aiming for new strategies in order to increase our population. Hungary's strategy by creating a Ministry of Family seems to be quite a nice and strong strategy.
The National People's Front, with the support of the people of Cyprus, has managed in the previous MP elections to be the fourth political party in the European elections. And we are growing. People are tired from the same policies that have been switching, but with no big difference between other political parties. They are looking for solutions for the day-to-day problems, for social policies for a better economy, for the day-to-day problems, and also they are seeking safety, both for day-to-day safety, which cannot be achieved with all the illegal immigration. We can hope for a bright future in Cyprus and for the whole region.
Rocio Demir, deputy and spokesperson for Spain's Vox, isn't pulling punches. From illegal immigration to media manipulation, she says Spain is under siege. By open borders, globalist interests, and a political class too afraid to act. She opens up about her party's clash with the mainstream, her uneasy alliance with the right, and why making Spain great again isn't just a slogan, it's the mission.
Vox in Spain, for example, we just grew against the mass media because not a journalist in a TV said nothing good about us. They were just lying and manipulated from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. And in this moment, there is like a super billionaire that is in war with woke politicians and woke powerful people in the world. It's different. And there is a billionaire that also has seen how mass media has betrayed people, has lied for years and years and years, people. And there is a billionaire that also has a story, a personal story with woke politics. And I think this is a war for him because he just saw that woke politics, that leftist politics in general in the world and in the Western world are finishing with families, are finishing with homelands, are finishing with individuals, are finishing with freedom, are finishing with everything that is valuable for us. So we have like a window open. Not all the winds against us, which was the natural growth of patriotism. No? Mass media, well, started to, started to be blind with migration consequences in our nation. The situation in Spain right now is quite horrible. I mean, I think we are in a crossroads right now, not only in Spain, but also in the rest of Europe. And this is probably the most important topic we're going to confront the next years. Because our countries have been invaded by massive migration. We did not receive, 4 or 10 refugees. We're talking about millions and millions of people that are in fact arriving to our country the last years, and that Spaniards' life is changing. In fact, if millions of people from different cultures, from different countries just establish in our homeland, well, our villages, our quartiers are going to change. And these are the changes that Spaniards are, seen in their lives, and they are really concerned in some places of Spain. In the case of Almeria, also, when we have all the boats that arrive every day to our coasts. So in Almeria, we have some villages like Níjar, in which maybe the 80% of new population is foreigner. We have a cultural invasion. Islamism is like invading different villages of Almeria, and maybe we see the problem nearly. We cannot betray our principles. I mean, we are going to be useless to our principles and to our nation. So this is the main reason that we broke our governments with PP, with the Popular Party. In the moment that we see that the Popular Party says that our borders have to be controlled, but then in the end, they just assume the Socialist Party politics and migration, and they assume it also in the regions. Well, we cannot be in the government with them. The PP supported Kamala Harris, for example. And so they were supporting the same candidate as the leftists in Spain. So they do not understand the situation, or maybe they have so many positions inside that they just play at every role, and they think that people is stupid, and people are not stupid. People see and read and listen what you say. And I think that people are reading and are listening, that Popular Party are saying one thing and the contrary. Spaniards and Europeans in general are seeing the reality through their own eyes. The most important thing that patriots have in common is that we want to defend our homelands. So we have a big alliance between the patriots. We have different homelands, but we have to be together to confront all those who want to break our homelands, to want to steal our identity, to want to betray our culture and our roots. In the end, it is always desirable to end a war, always desirable. And we think that all our military, all our possibilities, all our strength has to be focused on our national interest. And Ukraine is really far from here, is really far from Spain. So we are going to focus on our national sovereignty and our national problems, to concentrate all our strength to make Spain great again.
Now it's time for my take. There's a whole hell of a lot of unhinged panic going on around the world off the back of Donald Trump's tariff announcements this week. Shock and horror has been expressed globally, anger too. And look, I get it, this will impact millions of people. But what I can't comprehend nor sympathise with is the fact that any world leader is surprised. Donald Trump is not exactly backwards in going forwards. He's not what you'd describe as subtle. What I'm trying to say is, if a nation hasn't anticipated and planned, even well before the election, then they have failed their people, not Donald Trump. The entire premise of his campaign was America first. And yes, Americans will feel the brunt in some ways, but overall they will as a nation benefit, incredibly so. The correction will come and the shift back to homemade will be significant. The stock market will recover and the working class will boom. That's the point. The US president has also had immense success with tariffs already. Look at Mexico and Canada. They are a very powerful bargaining chip. Trump's perspective on doing the vast amount of heavy lifting in any relationship is well known. He hates it, passionately, and has been very vocal about it. Yes, many countries have been lulled into a false sense of security, but that's no excuse to have allowed yourselves to be completely reliant on another nation. This wake-up call has been a long time coming. And as far as appropriate responses from world leaders go, well, each to their own. But a suggestion, if you'll indulge me. Verbal barrages and petulant outbursts won't work. Not with this US president. Now, I'm not saying be weak and just roll over and take it. He won't respect that either. But be smart. Be reasonable. Come to the table with something good. He's the king of the deal. Make him one he can't refuse. The more we, each individual nation, make ourselves, the safer we will all be. These tariffs will lessen the US reliance on foreign supply chains and prioritise national security at the same time. And until other nation states can handle every existing and emerging global threat on their own, without American help, this is a win-win, despite a bit of short-term discomfort. That's it for 69X Minutes, where the real stories, they always get told. I'm Erin Molan. Thank you so much for joining us. No spin, no censorship, just the truth. We'll see you next week.